Ever wonder how some financial services and fintech leaders learned about money when they were kids? Well, we've asked them four important questions to get their answers, and you definitely want to hear them. Join me today as we hear from Eliana Carrier, wealth planner at Carrier Wealth Management. Hey everyone, Mac Gardner here, author of Motivate Your Money and the global best-selling children's book, The Four Money Bears. I am joined today by the one, the only, Eliana Carrier, certified financial planner, wealth planner at Carrier Wealth Management. Eliana, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Mac.
So, Eliana, tell us a little bit, for those who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and how involved you are in the things you're doing in our industry.
Of course, so I'm from Louisiana, Lafayette, Louisiana to be exact, and I went to LSU. And after I graduated college, I actually left and I came to Miami, Florida, where I currently reside. And I told my father, who's in the business, I did not want to work with him. And I'm going to Miami and I'm going to figure it out on my own. And I moved, unfortunately and fortunately, I moved to Miami in the same month that the pandemic had started, so in 2020. And so I was trying to make it on my own for about 8 months. And then my dad received the phone call. I call him Poppy. Poppy, I'm ready to start working with you. And so that's kind of how that relationship started. And as soon as I started in the industry, I had learned what a CFP was. And that's really where I found my passion. So I started studying for my CFP. And then I really added substantial financial planning to my father's practice. He was doing it before, but more back of the napkin type planning.
Yeah.
So I brought in a formal process to do financial planning for all of his clients. And so that's currently what I'm doing for the firm now. And my goals this year is to start expand our clientele into Miami.
That's wonderful. It's not often that you get to hear stories about young folks getting into the business, following pops. You often hear that they don't want to work with pops or work with a family member, but then a lot of times it makes a lot of sense. And what I like about your story, Eliana, is that he was doing it one way, but things are changing, right? The industry's changing. And I think CFP board, I'm a CFP as well, has done a lot of work to try to really expand the brand, get awareness out there, a lot more diversity, a lot more equity, a lot more inclusivity. So it's great to hear that things are working out. You're able to walk in that path and expand, right, as to the platform that you're given there. All right, so the topic we're talking about today is really about education. We are developing a first of its kind financial education game called the Four Money Bears Berryville. It's really designed to help families with young children start the conversation about money. So what we decided to do was, hey, let's reach out to folks in the industry who are either financial planners or in fintech and ask them, hey, what was sort of your first experiences? So are you ready for question number one?
Yes, I am.
All right, so question number one. What is your earliest memory of financial education growing up as a child?
So my earliest memory is what my parents called bonus bucks. So I guess traditionally kids would get allowances or their parents would tell them what chores to do and then they would get maybe an allowance for doing the chores. Well, my parents just had like a chart on the refrigerator and I have 4 brothers and we got to pick what chores we wanted to do and the chores had different values on them. And so we were almost working on a commission basis. So however much work we did was however much money we got, which it wasn't real money. It was, we called it bonus bucks.
Yeah.
And then at the end of every week or so, my mom would lay out on the living room table like a bunch of just treats and things, and then we could use our money in order to pay for that. And I specifically remember she always had like a gift card for a massage, and that was the one that I always.
That's the one you wanted.
And my mom would like act in the room, like have a whole spa set up, and I would get my little 60-minute massage whenever I was like 10 or 11.
That is awesome. So what I really appreciate about your story, we've done quite a few of these interviews, and it's amazing how visceral and how specific, right, these memories or connections with money are. But I like that in your home, the money was tied to doing things, value. Like it wasn't just going to be given. You had to do something. And I also like that the rewards were something different too. You know, it's there's candy, there's massages, and so I think the overarching story is that you have to work for it, right? And two, there's a connection to the value of it beyond just the regular stuff like candy and toys and stuff that young people want. Which really leads into the second question, Eliana. What did money represent in your household when you were growing up?
I think money represented choices. I was very fortunate enough to have a very healthy relationship with money, although we were in private school and I was around a lot of kids that were a lot wealthier than we were. But I also had other friends and family that were not as wealthy as we were. So I was able to see both sides of the coin, and my parents, I just remember really understanding how fortunate I was. We rarely got told no for things. I did all the sports, I did all the activities, I did all the extracurricular. I got a car whenever I was 16, things like that. I remember we went on family vacations. So for us, money was really allowing us to have that choice. And I remember my father, one day I was kind of complaining, our house is older, we don't have a pool, things like that. My dad was like, well, do you want just a pool or do you want the private school education that we're providing for you guys? And so they were able to really explain to us in a way where we knew that my parents were spending money on what they valued, and they valued experiences and education and things like that over material things.
Yeah. I think it's important. A lot of times we hear the different relationships with money, either growth or you have a lot of it or you didn't have a lot of it, and so that mindset that you have sort of sticks with you and how you engage money as you get older. And so the fact that you had sort of best of both, I guess you could say, to say, yeah, okay, we know what it's like to have it, but we're not going to go crazy because there's, again, a value system. And that's what I keep hearing in this story of yours is, yes, we have it. Your dad being in the business, right? So did he have those conversations with you growing up about specific things and investments and that type of those types of conversations?
So my dad used to come to our class and teach and tell us the difference between a stock and a bond. And,
awesome.
And he used to, just talk about his day and tell us fun, interesting things or things that he thought was fun and interesting. But I can say that I don't know how much the investing principle stuck with me at that age. I think what really stuck with me more was the value that I was putting on money and knowing that I needed to, work to get money, and it wasn't just something that was growing on
just
trees.
Given to you. Yeah.
And I got a pretty good equal share from both of my parents on how I should value money.
Great, both mom and dad. So leads us to the third question. Our game is really focused on the K through 5 space. We talk about the values that we get. We talk about the habits that we form growing up. How do you think we should teach young people about money?
That's a great question. So I can say for me, and I can compare for my brother. I do have 4, but I have one brother that is not very similar to me, and his experience was different. And I know it's kind of funny how you can be raised in the same household and just be so different from your siblings.
I've got 3 kids. I know.
For me, I really learned by doing. I learned by going through the experience of doing all of the chores and getting my commission and knowing that I needed this much in order to have whatever prize that I wanted. And I felt pride in that. It was exciting to me. It was exciting that I made the most money out of my brothers. It was competitive.
It's competitive.
So
I like that.
I thought that was a great way for me to learn. Now, for my other brother, he didn't care. He was like, well, I don't want anything anyway. So I'm just, if I don't, work, then I don't want anything. And if I want something, then I'll work and then I'll get it. And his career trajectory was in Broadway and in theater. And so he's worked really, really hard and not necessarily making as much money. And now he's on Broadway in New York and making more money than the older sibling, more money than me and more money than his older brother. And so it's kind of interesting. And that the first time I really thought about this was when you asked me that question. And so I would be interested in even asking him. I don't know necessarily like what value he got out of my parents teaching us, but maybe he needed a different way to learn because doing it at that time wasn't something that he was interested in.
You know, it's interesting you say that. Two things popped into my head. One, when he does need help, he has a CFP in the family to help him, so that's good. He can go to the sister or go to dad. But two, meeting young people where they are, I think, is something that as an industry we need to do a better job, which is why we're gamifying the For Money Bears, platform. Because if you're looking at K through 5, it better be fun, it better be gamified. Because if it's not, young people aren't going to do it. So I think you make a really, really good point. The habits are important. Doing it, connecting work with money, making it competitive. I think all those are really, really interesting factors that we're trying to weave into the things that we're doing ourselves. All right, last question. Ready? And I know you're in the biz, and it could be more than one answer if you have it. But what's the best advice you've been given when it comes to money?
So there's a lot of great advice that I've been given, but I'll do a piece of advice that I received very early on that has stuck with me, and that is, they didn't say it this way, but it's basically to always have an emergency fund. And the way that came about was whenever I was in high school, my parents gave me $100 bill, and they told me that this is your emergency money here. Always have it on you, no matter what, and that's your emergency fund. And throughout high school, I always had my $100 bill. And it was a thing that my parents did to like my brothers and people they cared about. That was kind of their thing. Give them a $100 bill. Never be without at least $100. And then whenever I got to college, it turned into $1,000. So my parents gave me $1,000 and they said, we're going to give you this in college. This needs to stay in your savings account. This is your emergency fund. And I never touched it throughout college. I worked in high school and in college, so they weren't giving me other money, but I had never had to touch my emergency fund, but I had it there if I needed it. And then in college, I wanted to move to Miami, and Miami's a lot more expensive than Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I was working.
You used to live there, I know.
Yeah, so I was working 2 jobs in college, and I wanted to get to Miami. So what I did was I saved enough for first, last, and security deposit rent, and I saved enough to have a $2,000 emergency fund because Miami's a little step up. And so that's all that I saved, and I moved to Miami with only a $2,000 emergency fund. And I still had instilled in me that I could just get a job the next day as a waitress and start working. And that's exactly what I did. And 5 years later, I'm still successfully living in Miami. So
that is such an awesome story. When I was growing up, my uncle gave me a $100 bill. I was probably like a teenager, and I keep a $100 bill in my wallet to this day.
Wow!
Like literally to this day, I keep it in there as an emergency. So hearing that just kind of brought a smile to my face. But I think the bigger story, Eliana, is that savings for emergency and knowing that there are going to be rainy times, and so you better have a plan in place for when that rain does come. And I think that's great advice. So thank you so much for sharing. Eliana, anything else that you'd like to share with us as we wrap up this interview?
I would like to share maybe for the parents that what I value so much about my parents is knowing that they will always be there for me, knowing that they raised me to be a strong, independent woman, but I had the confidence to come out to Miami on my own, knowing that my parents will receive me back with open arms if something didn't work out. And so I don't know, if parents really realize how important it is for your kids to know that they feel safe and secure with you, to talk to you about anything, to know that you will be there for them, to know that even if there's failures in life, that you can still lean back on your parents, or at least someone in your circle, because I know that I wouldn't be where I am today without my family and the close friends in my circle that I know that I can rely and depend on.
Amen to that, sister. Amen to that. Eliana, thank you again for sharing your time with us, sharing your stories. They were great. As I like to say, the journey continues. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you'll join us for our next engaging episode. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and visit www.theformoneybears.com.